e-teams receive from them, I think these people may be unable to keep up with that.
Right.
And therefore, that may encourage a lot of black market.
Okay. And when you reflect, because the projected collections for the current financial year would have meant a growth of 28%. Yet, as even the PS confirmed, on average, the revenue just grows by about 10%.
Yeah.
What would it take to grow up to 28%?
Perhaps the levels of enforcement and training on compliance for the general public, but also I think for most of us, I think when we pay taxes,
right,
we expect to see how the taxes being spent,
right,
being something that is of benefit to us. Okay. We know it's not commensurate, because I mean there's the issue of reallocation of resources, but can we see something? So if I'm working so hard and I'm paying that 35% above, and at the end of the day I still have to struggle to pay an insurance premium, I still have to take my children to private schools because I can. That's what those, I'm working for them.
Right.
And then, so what is this thing that is going to encourage me to want to pay those taxes?
Okay.
So that becomes a bit of a problem.
Let's reflect on what the Kenya Revenue Authority was reporting as of March this year, which is 9 months of the current financial year. On oil taxes, the target has been to collect up to 246 billion shillings. But by that time, the collection had been 225 billion shillings, which was 91%. Then non-oil taxes were supposed to be 447 billion shillings, but the collection had been 83%. And in fact, some of the import taxes have been reducing, and it may say something. Sandeep, what do you think, especially when you look at those oil taxes versus what happened in the Finance Bill of 2020, Finance Act of 2023, that imposed heavier VAT, still not achieving the target?
So Sam, I think for me, it's really a culmination of many things. So when we talked about trying to achieve targets, I mean, 91% is still quite commendable. But getting to what you had earlier mentioned, the 28%, might be really difficult to get to. But what I've seen Revenue Authority do is really 20 people to your site, and you give them a whole pile of documentation to review. She's laughing because she was formerly there. But today they come in a very lean team. They're using technology. They can actually clearly match your data. So for me, I think it is highly likely that they would get close to achieving their target through the use of technology and implementation of the same. So that, I would think, would really increase the collections.
Okay. For you, Kinuthia, so what do we do? Because if you look at even some of the proposals, whether it's eco-levy, whether it's the motor vehicle tax of 2.5% now without a cap, there's no definition of where that money will go. It looks like it just go to the budgetary support, but it doesn't achieve what their vision is, which is maintaining the roads, or if it's eco-levy, maintaining the environment. You don't see any ring fencing.
Well, so what we've seen in the last 2 years is a very aggressive approach to raising revenue compared to the previous periods, right? So if you look at 2022, so the finance bill of 2022, the government then targeted to raise just about 50 billion shillings. The year before that, it was in the 30s. And in the previous 3 years before that, it was always in the 30s. Then come 2023, we shoot up to 211 billion. And 2024 now, it has gone up to 300, I think, and 40 something, right? So 347 billion shillings. Now, what that tells you is that there's a big driving reason as to why the government really needs to raise revenue and raise it fast, because that change was not gradual. It was very fast. Of course, we do know about the issue of debt. So fine. So all of us can agree we need to pay our debt. The question is the how do we need to go about it? Now, when it comes to raising revenues, right? So last year we saw a lot of direct taxes, your housing levy and so go for the pay slip, cut what you can there. Now, when you come to 2024, we are seeing quite a number of indirect taxes, where you have your VATs and your excise duties. Now, what you see in global practice, and often the good practices around raising some of this, like the eco levy that you've spoken to, in many countries that have that levy, it can only be for three possible reasons. Right? So the first one is, are you trying to deal with issues of maintenance of roads? Many cars means wear and tear for the roads. In this scenario, do we know what the eco-levy or the motor vehicle, because they are somewhere related to the environment. Sorry, that was the motor vehicle actually that I'm speaking to. Thank you. The other one is whether it's about the environment, right? So is it about reducing pollution? Again, when you look at this bill, you can't tell whether it's that, which means then the money will be ring-fenced for issues to deal with the environment. And the third one is a circulation one. In fact, some of the people that have been describing it have used that phrase. Mm. So the example of the motor vehicle levy, right, is a tax, not even a levy, a motor vehicle tax, leaves you confused on what is it. And the fact that it's located under the income tax section of the bill even creates more confusion. The eco-levy, we've seen it in some other countries. You do see it in some countries where there's an eco-levy. And in many of those countries, what you see is that there's also a measure of just how much pollution or how much impact are you having on the environment. Then that kind of determines what you pay. And that also means that then you can drive those resources to deal with the implication of what damage you expected that you are causing. So what we are seeing, we feel, is really an element of less collect more, to go to general budget support and to go to debt repayment. But where the collection is coming from, seems like there should be a slightly different policy around it. Okay. And that goes together with what Karambo said, which is provide a good explanation. Let people understand, and I think Sandeep spoke to it as well, let people understand the implication, the justification for why you need to raise an eco-levy. Right now, if you've listened to every explanation that we've had, and you have hosted many of our government colleagues, one explanation one day, one explanation the other day. And that creates a lot of confusion on, is this tax necessary? Should it be collected now? And if it should be collected, is the how of collecting it also the right one, right? So I think there's quite a lot that the National Treasury can really help, even in future finance bills, to help explain the why of the collection and the impact, so that the public has a better understanding, even when we're engaging with Parliament.
All right, I want to take closing remarks, but I also wish that any of you could reflect on the pending bills over 600 billion shillings, 94,000 suppliers. These are debts owed since 2005 to 2022, an allocation of 10 billion shillings. Yet we are paying debts, yes, we're making provisions for them, but we're not making sufficient provisions for pending bills, which are actually debts. In closing, Sandeep.
So yeah, thanks, Sam. I think for me, as you talk about expenditures, one of the key things would be managing the expenditure of the government itself. So I don't know if you've seen it, but there is a proposal where public officers are allowed to get a reimbursement tax-free for any assets that they purchase, as long as they say they purchased that asset for the use of their duties. And that's irrespective of the ownership. So you wonder whether I could buy a car, land, a building, a hotel, perhaps, I don't know. So when we talk about increase in expenditure, then that would be one very critical element for us to talk about and say, look, we're trying to increase our taxes to collect more. What can we reduce? What will be the expenditures that we can manage? And the eco-levy really coming to it. It's meant to be exactly what Kinuthia said about the environment, but when you start imposing that on even locally manufactured goods and not just imports, what does that mean about how competitive we'll be? I think for me, it's really a mixed bag. There are some good things, like I mentioned, tax-free pensions. When you reach retirement, I think when you reach retirement age, and if you work for 20 years, you can still withdraw and take your money. But the ripple impact would be, if I do withdraw my money, and I've worked for quite a while, I'm very short to the 20-year mark, I will withdraw that money tax-free. The question would be, what happens to the pension schemes if everyone starts doing that? And pension schemes are one of the largest contributors to IFPs and funding the government.
Okay.
Thank you.
Karambo.
On the eco-levy, I feel that we need to have a coherent legal framework to determine what goods are deemed more polluting or significant contributors to the degradation of the environment before we get to it, and how really these rates are arrived at. So I'm looking at something like a motor vehicle, and so you have the
that circulation tax.
Right.
And then now you have a battery will probably cost 17,000 shillings as a result of the 793, around that figure per kg of the battery. So how will the economy run? And there's a fuel levy that is being increased. So imagine public transportation. All that, it will become really difficult just to operate within the economy with this. And so imagine your small salary, or maybe not very small, minus your pay, minus housing levy, and then you're finding all these indirect taxes, and your motor vehicle, then at the end of the day,
also,
Yeah, yes. So what are you left with for your household?
Okay.
So it becomes very complicated. But I have a positive item that I see in the bill, and that is the uniformity in the taxation of cigarettes. As an excise person, for me, that is a big issue, because we are signatories of the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, and one of the requirements is for uniformity in the taxation, so that, of course, we don't have people moving from one, there's no less harmful cigarette than the other. And I wish that, of course, I've seen a bit of increase in tax on the nicotine.
Right.
But I would wish to see something bigger done, because we really need to protect our children and youth.
Right.
Yes.
So finally, you have the honor of having the final word. I don't know what it is.
So I'll start with the pending bills that you asked about.
Sure.
So pending bills, of course, are a big issue, especially when we are thinking about the economy and we want the economy to grow. Part of that economy growing is that small businesses have to actually run their business and get paid when they provide goods and services. So you can see the challenge that comes with having such huge pending bills. And remember, these are at the national level and at the county level as well. The Parliamentary Budget Office that advises Parliament on issues of the budget did a really nice report sometime early this year that reviewed pending bills at a very good detail. And one of the things they said, which we found very interesting, was that to settle the current set of pending bills, it will require the government to invest in the repayment about 150 billion shillings every year for the next 5 years. So when you compare that to the number that you gave of what has been allocated, you can see that we are quite below what will be probably a target that we go for. But it's also good to remember and remind Kenyans that pending bills, often pending bills are thought just to be what companies provide